Tuned into the Sports Cubicle with Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, Dan Marver, and myself, Mike Mercado. And we need to take a look at one of the big sports stories of this weekend, and that is the rivalry between LIV Golf and the PGA Tour. And this is a story that I've had my eye on personally for a long time because of the ramifications of not just star players not being able to play in the PGA, but we're talking about morality here. And I know in this country, everything is so divided. But I thought that journalists being killed, maimed with bone saws would be enough for us to all kind of take a step back and kind of evaluate what we are talking about, what we are looking at. And I know for a lot of people in this country that you have to do what you have to do to get paid, to pay rent, baby formula, school, housing. I get it. But we're not talking about you, the average person that's amazing, listen to us here on the Sports Cubicle, who are sports fans, theater fans, music fans. It's not what we're talking about. This story has to deal with PGA players who are rich, and in Phil Mickelson's case, super rich over and squandered it by gambling. I'm no one to judge. I love going to DraftKings, FanDuel, Bet Rivers, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars lost. And now having to essentially sell your soul to play for the LIV Golf Tour that is backed by Saudi money. And that is where all this controversy comes to. And I wanted to get like a good description for all you who are listening, because it's only fair that we really look through this entire thing and we just presented what it is. So I went on golf.com, and this comes from Sean Zach. It is, what is LIV Golf? LIV Golf is the organization staging the LIV Golf Invitational Series. Two-time major champion Greg Norman is the CEO and commissioner of the league, which is aiming to be an alternative arena to the PGA Tour for the world's best players. LIV Golf is backed by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which is among the most lucrative sovereign wealth funds in the world, with an estimated value of $600 billion. Say that one more time, $600 billion. So why is this so controversial? LIV Golf is controversial because of the source of its funding. Saudi Arabia's PIF, the PIF serves as the financial arm of the Saudi government, which has committed numerous human rights violations. And the most notable, like we talked about in recent years, was the assassination and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post reporter and outspoken critic of the Saudi government. Now, I know a lot of people in this country want to put nooses and hang politicians. We saw it happen on January 6th. We know that there's riots on the streets. We know that there's peaceful protests on the streets. We know people feel very strongly about certain things. Sometimes things get out of hand. But the one thing that we don't seem to really do in this country is take outspoken journalists or reporters and kidnap them in a hotel, drag them out, and brutally murder them. Well, that's what the Saudi Arabia government did. And before we go on too far, let's not forget that it's not just these PGA players, these former PGA players that are doing this. In an attempt to cleanse his reputation, this article continues, the Saudi government has invested heavily in sports organizations and events, ranging from the Premier League to the WWE, a practice which is known as sports washing. Sports washing is commonly utilized as a propaganda technique to distract the public from its violation and abuses. Again, I highly suggest you go check out Sean Zach's entire article at golf.com. What is LIV Golf? And they talk about the rules of the tournament and the league and why it's different from the PGA. But I don't care about that. And I know that for a lot of you listening to the Sports Cubicle, you're fans of golf. You heard that story about Tiger Woods almost being offered $1 billion to join this league. I don't want to talk about what the actual sport is or what the rules are or anything like that. We got to talk about what does it take? What is the value? What is the line going to be drawn? We mentioned it already. I know it's hard to make money. I know how important it is to make money. But you and I are the average Joes. And the average Joes or the average person, it doesn't matter. We need to make money to survive. So in this corporate world that is all connected, things are made in China. Things are made in the United States. You get gas from the Middle East. It's understandable how it's just one market. But that's the world in which you're living in. You don't have any other choice. What are you going to do? But these golfers do have a choice. These golfers have decided that they would rather a whole lot of money And it is a whole lot of money. And I don't know how I would handle myself if somebody gave me $100 million to play a sport I was going to play anyway. But at what point do we as fans make a stand? How many people were watching this Invitational in London this past weekend? They don't have a TV deal, so they're giving it free on YouTube. How many people were watching it? And for that matter, this organization that is sports washing from the Saudi Arabia government, who's going to watch it besides the diehards of the diehards or those who have been manipulated and brainwashed in this political world that we're living in? Because other than the major four, right? The four majors, the PGA, the British Open, the US Open, and the Masters, unless you are a true diehard or play the sport religiously, who is watching golf every single week? And now we have this as a quote unquote alternative. You know, again, international money and countries that have been around for so long, there's going to be dirt. There's going to be bad all around. But it's 2022. And just a few years ago, a journalist that lived in the United States was murdered by the government that sanctioned it. And not just murdered, not just some espionage thing that you see on a 007 movie or a Jason Bourne movie. They used a bone saw to dismember this journalist who was outspoken to this government. So what happens when Phil Mickelson doesn't like a call to him? Is he going to disappear? What happens when a sponsor doesn't like something, a vendor doesn't do something right? Are they going to disappear from the face of the earth? Are we going to hear the roar of a bone saw? This isn't towards the Saudi people. This is for the Saudi government, the prince, and all this nonsense of political, geopolitical Game of Thrones where the dollar bill is worth more than the average fan or person. It's gross. And we haven't even talked about what's going to happen in Qatar, Qatar for the World Cup, where slaves are dying building these stadiums and these housing units. But we'll all be watching in November, right? These are things that we need to think about when we're watching the sports. I love sports. I love watching the NBA, MLB, the NFL, knowing full well that in the NBA, they're taking money from China. And they backed up from the China government as soon as things got a little dicey. I know in the NFL, a lot of these dudes are killing themselves with CTE and breaking down their body. I understand that. I know my complicity in this whole thing. But where do we draw the line? I thought the line was drawn of innocent civilians speaking their opinion in the United States, going somewhere else and being murdered. And now the WWE is as complicit as anybody else. Vince McMahon is as complicit as anybody else in this nonsense. The Premier League is as guilty as anybody. The United States as well, because we take a bunch of Saudi money. And if you don't think that this is a big deal, this is something that you shouldn't keep your eye on, why is it then families of the 9/11 victims are upset about this? Look into that. You know, in a world full of conspiracies, and I know you hear a lot of them here on WCPT 820 when you have contrarians want to come in about fake COVID stuff and that the riots didn't happen. Look into what happened on September 11th. You want to talk about real conspiracies. It's crazy how far athletes and certain people will go for the dollar bill. And I get it. We keep mentioning it. But Phil Mickelson isn't you. Phil Mickelson isn't the average Joe who has to work 2 jobs, putting kids through college. He made almost $100 million just on being the tour itself, not including sponsorships. So he decided to sell his soul because he was gambling away his money. So whatever. But I think to put a bow into this part of the conversation, what makes me more angry than anything is you got to be honest with yourself. I think most Americans watch football or these other sports knowing what they're watching. When we watch boxing, when we watch MMA. But these athletes who are up there in the press conferences telling you they don't have to answer these questions or that it isn't a big deal. You had the guts you had the intestinal fortitude to take that money, right? But you don't have enough to speak on it, to be responsible about it. That's where it's wrong. And that's where these guys should be absolutely embarrassed. Because that's what happened with this. When you see these press conferences, I don't have to answer this. And if the PGA and the American-based tournaments, the Opens, want to be true on their word, none of them will be allowed. Now, an Open or an Invitational, Augusta National should not allow these guys to play in the Masters. And I know we're talking about some big names, Dustin Johnson, Bryce DeChambeau, like guys who have won, who are right there. They should not be allowed to play. If the PGA is going to stick to their guns and say that they're about something, which we know they're not, they're just mad that there's a competitor out there. But if they want to have the optics of pretending to be about something, be about it. Don't let these guys play. Let us know your thoughts. We're on Twitter. What do you think about this new LIV Open, this invitational, this tournament, this new organization being funded by Saudi money? Again, this isn't towards the average Joe or the average woman, the average kid trying to make money wherever they can. This isn't even the geopolitical issue we have of money is just all over the place. These are millionaires who have decided that money, that blood money, is worth more than what they were doing before because it was just too much to not accept. So I want to know your thoughts. Let us know. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. It's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado.